part of your brain which controls the dopamine and makes it worse. It's called the prefrontal cortex, the part in the front, the executive function part, the Jiminy Cricket of your brain that keeps you from doing stupid things, puts it into suspended animation and makes the dopamine run rampant. And at the same time, it makes the serotonin receptors go down so you can derive less contentment from whatever it is you're experiencing.
The ability to regulate attention is part of something called the executive function system. It's kind of like our brain's self-management system, what allows us to plan, prioritize, and sustain effort toward a goal, say, making dinner, without getting sidetracked. It's what allows us to inhibit, or not act on, our impulses and ignore distractions so we can stay on task and switch when it's time to switch. In the ADHD brain, executive functions develop much more slowly than in neurotypical brains. And we have a deficit in the brain chemicals that help them function. So we usually know what to do and have the best intentions, but our executive function system isn't always developed or functioning well enough to effectively help us do it. And it's just as frustrating for us as it is for anyone else. Haley Melville explains it like this. Your brain is like a secretary, and you're the CEO in a meeting, doing a task. In a neurotypical brain, their secretary greets guests, potential distractions, lets them know that the CEO is in a meeting, and either encourages them to make an appointment or shows them the door. My secretary either lets everyone into the meeting, nor lets no one in, even if it's something important. Another executive function is working memory. That's our ability to temporarily hold information in our head so we can work with it. Like, look at a recipe and then remember the steps while we cook. It's our brain's version of RAM. Everyone has a limited capacity of working memory, but it's often more limited in those with ADHD, which is one reason we might blurt out an answer before we forget it, or ask you to repeat what you just said. Timothy Warnke says, "It's like my brain is a whiteboard, and I have to write down everything that's happening right away. But I write kind of big, so pretty soon I have to erase a bunch of stuff to make more room." By the way, that's also why we tend to have trouble following multi-step directions. It's also why Post-it notes are helpful. Another fun fact about ADHD, not everyone with ADHD is hyperactive, at least not on the outside. ADHD has 3 different presentations, and they can change over time. So even if someone doesn't look like they have ADHD, they still might. Even if they're not bouncing around the room, their brain might be. It's often referred to as internal restlessness, and it's exhausting. Diana DeVader Murray explains her mind like being on a hamster wheel you can't ever get off of. Deborah Cradaville says it's like a pinball machine with the ball constantly hitting and bouncing between all the bumpers. All this energy can be great when we can direct it well. It often shows up as creativity, generosity, curiosity. We tend to think outside the box, and we're 3 times more likely to start our own business. But for us to take advantage of our brain's strengths, it's important that we learn to manage our ADHD, which often means using a combination of medication and other strategies. ADHD expert Dr. Ned Hallowell explains it like this. Having ADHD is like having a race car engine for a brain. It's very powerful, and it can propel you to win races. There's just one problem. You have bicycle brakes. But with the help of a brake specialist, you learn to strengthen your brakes and control that powerful engine. Then your race car stops spinning out on turns and starts winning races. Because we do tend to crash a lot while we're building up those brakes, those of us with ADHD tend to get corrected or teased more often than our peers. And unfortunately, another aspect of ADHD can make that extra painful for us. Our brains don't just have trouble regulating our attention, they have trouble regulating our emotions too. Jennifer Peterson explains, when it comes to emotional dysregulation, it's like I have a really bad sunburn. Even a playful slap on the back hurts so bad. If you didn't know some of these things about ADHD, don't worry, I didn't either until a couple of years ago, and I actually have it. I thought I was just too sensitive, or a space cadet, or weird, because that's what I was always told, and I'm not alone. That's why ADHD Brains made this video, and why we hope you'll share it. When our ADHD symptoms are seen as personality defects, it can be hurtful, and worse, we believe it. It takes a huge toll on our self-esteem and can lead to other conditions like anxiety and depression. And honestly, it's really confusing. As Comiendo Biscocho puts it, it's like being the smartest, stupidest, most motivated, and laziest person in the room, all at the same time. But if we and others understand what our challenges are, we can accept them, find strategies to help us work through them, and more importantly, stop beating ourselves up about them so we can focus on more important things, like what we're good at. And we can stop writing off ourselves or others for being different and start appreciating what that difference can bring to the world.